felt like my face was going to explode. Yeah, just trying to remind myself of that. I don't know if the baby is just like sitting on my bladder or what. I might be huge by the time that I have this baby. I haven't slept through the night a single time. Well, I have officially hit 28 weeks, which means I'm at the end of my second trimester. I've been using the Flow app to log symptoms and to track growth, and right now it says our baby is the size of a coconut. Not sure how accurate it is because a few weeks ago we went from the size of a bunch of grapes to a turnip to a head of cauliflower. Now we're a coconut. So I don't know. I just feel like a turnip is a lot smaller than any of those other three. But it is really fun just to have a cool way of visualizing the baby's growth. It's kind of funny, I was looking back and the second trimester felt so long for me, but then the more I thought about it, the more I realized like I should have expected that since I only knew I was pregnant for 3 weeks of the first trimester. Which, if you don't know the story behind that, make sure to watch my first trimester vlog because I go into that in a lot more detail. Looking back on the past few months, it is crazy just how much has happened. We had the anatomy scan, we found out baby's gender, we had a whole little gender reveal party that honestly was so much fun. Took the glucose test, so there's a lot to catch you up on. So I figured we could start with some of the symptoms I've been experiencing, and if you want to be able to navigate through this video, I will try to timestamp it all for you. So if there is something specific that you're interested in hearing me talk about, just go ahead and navigate there. But let's start with symptoms, and I feel like it makes the most sense to divide this kind of into thirds because I feel like I experienced the second trimester in 3 major chunks. So first, we have about weeks 14 to 18. During this time, my nausea left for the most part, which I was super grateful for. I started noticing it kind of getting a little bit less intense around weeks 13 to 14, and then by the end of that time frame, I hardly noticed it at all. It's like it would flare up a little bit occasionally, but it was super manageable. Oh, it was really funny. I think it was during week 17 or 18 that I actually threw up for the first and only time so far this pregnancy. Kind of brought that upon myself though. I hadn't eaten consistently enough during the day, and then for whatever reason, I decided it would be a great idea just to eat a carton of tomatoes, which are super acidic. So I literally ate an entire carton of tomatoes in maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And then by the time I was nearing the end of the carton, I had 3 or 4 tomatoes left. They all just came back up. So that was not the greatest experience, but also I did that to myself. Not that you can't have acidic foods during pregnancy, but it's probably not the best idea to have them on an empty stomach and be the only thing that you're eating. That was really a one-off thing. Apart from that, haven't dealt with a ton of nausea in the second trimester. Heartburn, on the other hand, that's another story. We'll get there. But first, probably the most noticeable symptom for me during that first month of the second trimester was just feeling tired all the time. I was super tired in the first. That was actually the main thing that signaled to me that I needed to take a pregnancy test. But people kept telling me that in the second trimester, you have a lot more energy. I kept waiting for that to happen, but weeks 14 through 18, I was still exhausted all the time. We went on a trip to Europe during this time, and I was literally going to bed at 9 p.m. and sleeping until 8 a.m. I was getting 10 or 11 hours of sleep at night and still feeling tired. Which honestly, it was nice that we were on vacation and I was able to get the rest that I needed. I just felt a bit bad for Christopher because I was abandoning him practically at night. But actually, speaking of Europe, it was actually while we were in France that I felt the baby move for the first time. So as a part of our trip, we did a 2-day tour of Normandy. It was actually while we were on the bus riding to Mont-Saint-Michel, which was so incredible, by the way. But while we were on the bus, I just was sitting there, and all of a sudden I kind of described it as the pages of a book being turned, when you have the spine and you just flip through all the pages. That's kind of what it felt like. That was just so sweet. But then on the less fun side of symptoms that I experienced during this time was a decent amount of round ligament pain. But it was kind of funny. I actually felt it the most whenever I sneezed. So there was probably a 3 or 4 week window in there where I was almost afraid to sneeze because I knew I would have a sharp shooting pain accompanied with it. It wouldn't last long, but it was definitely definitely noticeable. But then probably the most lasting and also the symptom that I was least prepared for was nasal swelling. I had zero idea this was a thing until I started experiencing it. So I guess what happens is, of course, during pregnancy, your hormone levels increase, you have more blood flowing through your body, and as a result, your mucous membranes can swell easily and also bleed. The stuffiness and nosebleeds are just like par for the course. I didn't realize this until we were flying back from Ireland. I kind of had a bit of a sniffly nose for maybe the last 2 days of the trip, but then over the course of that plane journey, the fact that I had the sniffles combined with the swelling in my nose and the really dry air on the plane, it made it so that I had the worst congestion, honestly, of my entire life. I felt like my face was going to explode as we were landing. Like, the pressure was unlike anything I have ever experienced. It was so painful, and literally when we landed, one of my ears popped, the other didn't pop until 2 hours after we landed. It was extremely painful, and of course I talked to my doctor, figured it out. We were able to find ways to reduce my symptoms while they were really intense for the few days after I landed. But that was my introduction to nasal swelling during pregnancy, and even though probably the 3 days after we got back were the worst for me, I've been dealing with a stuffy nose, and like whenever I go to blow my nose, I'll often find a little bit of blood on the Kleenex ever since. All right, then let's jump ahead a bit and talk about kind of that time frame between weeks 19 to 23. So first off, when it comes to the tiredness I was experiencing, week 19 was definitely a turning point for me. And from then till about the past week or two, I noticed significantly higher energy levels. Still needed plenty of sleep, but it was more like my normal 8 hours of sleep that I needed instead of 9, 10 or more. It was also around this time that I started noticing quite a bit of heartburn, which in some ways felt like it brought me back to the first trimester. So for the past several weeks, I've been just taking Tums fairly regularly as needed. They really have become like my best friend. I keep some at my bedside, in our kitchen, in my purse, and I try not to take too many of them, like only when I actually need them, but I've been okayed by my doctor to take pretty much as many as I want. And they do help a lot. But then during this time, I also noticed a number of body changes as well. One of the first things that I noticed was that the amount of hair that I was losing, just like my regular hair loss, was reduced to almost zero, which was so nice because prior to that, I think between our miscarriage and then previously going off the pill, my hair had been in a major shedding phase. So it's been really nice feeling like I'm just not constantly losing hair, which does have me worried for postpartum, and I just feel like I know I'm going to be one of those people who loses hair because my hair is fickle. It really is. But it's been nice during the season being able to retain it. But then also, I mean, obviously my belly had been slowly growing throughout the entire pregnancy, but it was during this time that I noticed kind of like my belly popping, if you will. Like, it felt like there were days where my belly and my boobs too were trying to grow like an entire size in one day. There was a lot of tightness, and yeah, just everything felt a bit sore. I will say a couple things I discovered that really helped with that, kind of started using them during this time frame, but I've been using them ever since, are bio oil, and then it's this Palmer's, I think it's stretch mark lotion. I use the two in combination, and I basically was just applying them whenever I felt like tightness in my belly, my chest, anything like that. So for a while there, I was applying them twice a day. Now typically I'm applying it only after I shower because it takes a while for it to dry. So I apply that after I shower, kind of as I'm doing my little moisturizing routine. And then if I need to, I'll kind of apply it once more in between showers. But what I'll say is, they say whether or not you get stretch marks is very dependent on your genetics, which I fully support and believe. However, those two products just provided a lot of relief to me when I felt like everything was just very tight and just like stretching really quickly. Then the last thing for this time frame was that it was this month where I started noticing that I had to go to the bathroom all the time. I think probably since week 20, I haven't slept through the night a single time. I always have to get up to go to the bathroom at least once, usually 3 to 4 times. I know for some people that's not a big thing until they reach the 3rd trimester, but I don't know if the baby is just like sitting on my bladder or what, but yeah, I need to pee constantly. All right, then let's talk about the final stretch of the second, weeks 24 to 27. Continuing that conversation of sleep, this is when I really started noticing just that I needed a bit more support in bed. So this is when I finally got a pregnancy pillow. Actually, let me grab that for you. I'm gonna pee too. I'll be back. So here is my pregnancy pillow. I knew that I didn't want a massive pregnancy pillow, number one, because we sleep on a queen size bed and I didn't want the pillow to take up the entire bed. But then also I shift sides. Like I'm a natural side sleeper, but I shift what side I sleep on throughout the night. So I wanted something that I could easily sleep on either side with, and that it wouldn't have to like require me fully flipping over and readjusting the pillow to do so. So I got this and it took a little bit of getting used to, but I have to say I've kind of fallen in love with it. It's just kind of like hugs you in and supports you on either side as you're sleeping. It also comes with this little guy, which I usually tuck between my legs so that I can kind of maintain it's not a parallel line, but like proper spinal posture. And that's really helped. So if you're interested, I will link to it below. I really wanted something that would just be a bit more minimal, a bit lower profile, and I've been really happy with it. And something else that started happening during this time, probably in like the couple of weeks leading up to me getting the pregnancy pillow, was started experiencing some back and like pelvic floor pain. The pregnancy pillow did help some with that, but in addition, I have started incorporating a lot more mobility into my exercise routine. So really trying to focus on stretches that will help strengthen the pelvic floor, and some that are related to back stretching as well, although just really trying to be careful with those because you need to listen to your body in pregnancy, and there are certain back stretches that I used to do that I've tried being pregnant and I like start getting into them and I'm like, nope, this is a no-go during pregnancy. So the back ones have been a bit harder, but pelvic floor, the mobility has been helping a ton with. And then something that I think I want to start doing in the 3rd trimester is to start going to see a chiropractor. I've heard really good things about chiropractors for help both with back pain and pelvic floor stuff during pregnancy, so probably going to give that a try, although haven't done so yet. Then the last thing I'd say I've noticed is, for the first time during the past few weeks, I've noticed an actual appetite increase. Like before, I was kind of eating a little bit more and especially trying to focus on higher protein foods and all of that because I knew I needed them for pregnancy. But the past couple of weeks is the first time where I'm like actually hungry and just wanting food, it feels like all the time. So still trying to keep things fairly healthy, but for sure there's been a pretty noticeable uptick in my hunger levels. I think that's pretty much it as far as the symptoms I've been dealing with in the 2nd trimester go. So now let's talk about some of the highlights. So I already shared at 15 weeks, I got to feel the baby move for the first time, and that was just the most surreal thing. And I kind of felt it here and there over the next couple of weeks, but then by week, I think it was 17 or 18, I began feeling it like daily and pretty regularly even at that. I've been saying this to everyone, but there's something about feeling your baby moving inside of you that is just the most magical, surreal thing. Like that alone makes so many of the more uncomfortable symptoms of pregnancy just worth it a million times over. But then another major highlight was right before Thanksgiving. So I think I was at 19 weeks. We had our anatomy scan, and ultrasounds are always just so special. I love getting to hear the baby's heartbeat, getting to see them. We didn't find out the baby's gender at the ultrasound, but we got pictures and got to see everything else. Our ultrasound tech just did a really good job of having us look away whenever any anatomy parts would be visible, and then she actually wrote in an envelope the baby's gender. Actually, no, she didn't even just write it in one envelope. What she did was she wrote just the "it's out blank" in one envelope for us to give to a friend. And then in another envelope, she put a little picture with photo proof that we could open after we done the gender reveal, just to confirm everything was in order. So that was really fun. And then it was also just really encouraging to hear and to be able to see that everything was progressing really well with the baby. They were growing on track and all of that. And that's one thing I think, having walked through a miscarriage before this, it really does make the ultrasounds where everything comes back, where the baby's looking happy, healthy, they're growing, all of that, just makes it so much more meaningful. So yeah, overall, our anatomy scan was just such a sweet time. It was really just a special moment for Christopher and I. And then fast forward a week, and this is when we had our gender reveal party, which is when not only did we find out the gender, but everyone at our party found out the gender as well. I thought it was really fun the way that we did it. I feel like most of the time either one person or a couple people will know the gender so they can kind of plan everything out. But in this case, we kind of had a blind gender reveal. So my friend who hosted our gender reveal party basically invited all our friends, family, planned the whole thing. It was so sweet. Thank you so much, Christina. Honestly, that was a beautiful day. But what she did is she had a friend of hers look at the envelope that had the gender written in it and go and buy the poppers that we were going to use to reveal the gender. So that way, at the party, no one knew if we were having a boy or if we were having a girl, which made it really fun because I asked everyone to wear blue if they thought it was a boy, pink if they thought it was a girl. We got pictures with everyone kind of with what their guess was. So that was a blast. And of course, if you watched our gender reveal video, you know that I was super surprised to find out that we were having a little boy. Then after the gender reveal, on the baby front, things really slowed down over Christmas, and Christopher and I really just tried to enjoy to the fullest our last Christmas with just the two of us. I mean, next year we're going to be going from a couple to a family. That's going to change things and in some ways make things so much more beautiful. But we also wanted to enjoy just this last Christmas with the two of us. So it was just really great, and it was also around, I can't remember if it was the week of Christmas or of New Year's, but it was around that time that I hit 24 weeks, which for me was a really huge milestone in a sense, because I knew that once I hit that threshold, we had a chance, even if complications arose, that our baby could be delivered and live, which again, having walked through a miscarriage, that was super meaningful. Now, obviously, we are hoping, we are praying that this baby goes full term, and right now there isn't any reason to think that it wouldn't, but just hitting that milestone for us just gave me a ton of peace. So those have been some of the big highlights of this trimester, but of course, it hasn't been without its struggles. So speaking of our miscarriage, overall, I have just been so grateful not to be plagued with a sense of worry or fear or anxiety really at all during this pregnancy. It was something that I was nervous about going into, but kind of experience and walking through pregnancy, just something about this has felt different. I have felt a lot of peace and a lot of security, and I truly believe that honestly that has been a gift from God, and I am just so thankful for that. I will say what I think has been harder for me isn't so much nerves or anxiety about this pregnancy, it's just been the difficulty of kind of continuing to mourn the loss of our previous child while still looking forward to and anticipating and enjoying this pregnancy and the birth of this child coming up in a couple of months. So there's kind of been a tension there that at various times has been harder for me to work through, and I've talked through it with Christopher and to a number of people, which has really helped. But there has been kind of a tension and a difficulty there that I just really want to recognize that if you've walked through a miscarriage, it does make your experience of pregnancy a bit more nuanced and a bit more challenging, I think. Then kind of on the practical, more physical side of things, a lot of people talk about the second trimester as almost like the honeymoon phase when everything is great, you feel your best, all of that. And I did experience that a lot more kind of in the second half of the second trimester, but in the first half, I was so tired all the time that I felt like I kept waiting for my energy to come back. I was kind of sharing this already with you, but I was waiting for my energy to come back, for me to not be tired all the time. And I felt like it took me way longer than people were saying for that to happen. Like, it probably wasn't until somewhere between week 18 and week 20 where I finally felt like I had a normal amount of energy. And even now, as I'm entering the third, I can kind of feel it going away again too. So not that it's been bad at all, but it's just funny because I think I had this expectation in my head for what the second trimester was going to be like. And at least at first, I wasn't really experiencing all the energy and the, oh, you can eat whatever you want and whatever that a lot of people talk about in pregnancy. But then let's talk a bit too about how my body has been changing, especially in the past couple months. So boobs, I mean, they're still probably smaller than the average person, but they're growing for sure. I think I've gotten past the phase where I'm in like a lot of pain from them growing, but they're definitely bigger than they were. But then obviously the biggest change has been my belly growing. And it's kind of funny, at 18 weeks, I was feeling like I was almost behind because my belly just hadn't grown as much as I thought that it would. But in the past few weeks, it has popped and I'm like, how do I have an entire other trimester that this is going to get bigger? Like, I might be huge by the time that I have this baby. On top of my belly growing, I have noticed just some overall weight gain too. I don't think it's been anything too drastic, but I have noticed things like my arms or my thighs are just holding on to a bit more weight than they did pre-pregnancy, which in one sense has been a little bit hard to come to terms with. Not like regularly, but just if I went to go put something on that just didn't fit right in one of those spots, I'd be like, oh, that's inconvenient. But then at the same time, I am just every time those thoughts come up trying to remind myself of just how worth it this baby's going to be, and the fact that, you know, I really am trying to nourish and to support my body in this. And if I'm feeding myself appropriately, if I'm feeding myself the right things, my body's just going to gain the weight that it needs to support this child, and that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, just trying to remind myself of that anytime kind of like negative thoughts around the weight gain come up has definitely been a big thing for me. But overall, it has just been really fun to watch my body change and grow just to accommodate this new little one that we're bringing into the world. And yeah, again, like having walked through a loss before, like it just makes me so grateful for where we're at and just the fact that I get to experience all of these things, because like this time last year, a few months ago even, like I would have given anything for that. So just like anytime something comes up, just thinking about that, it just automatically puts things into perspective for me. All right, but then I just want to wrap this up with spending a few minutes kind of looking ahead, and especially as this second trimester has come to a close, I'm entering the third, I've noticed a huge shift in kind of where I'm at mentally, really trying to hone in and focus on the baby registry, putting together the nursery, labor and delivery, and even postpartum too. But then post-labor and delivery, and really the last thing that I wanted to touch on is maternity leave, because obviously YouTube is such an incredible job. I love how flexible it is, the fact that I get to exercise my creativity, the relationship that I've built with you guys, like it really is incredible. But unlike a traditional job, it doesn't have built-in maternity leave. But I still want to prioritize time with our baby and our little family, and so I am planning on taking some time away from YouTube and doing, I guess, just an unpaid maternity leave. I will say I'm in the process of figuring this all out right now. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I'll tell you right now that I'm kind of thinking that it will be probably 4 to 6 weeks where I'm just not posting to YouTube at all, where I'm completely off, completely present with my baby. And honestly, in those first few weeks, I hear at least, you don't get much sleep anyways, so you're probably wouldn't even want to be watching the videos I'd be posting then at any rate. So I'll take probably a month to a month and a half off, and then after that I plan to hopefully go to 1 video a week for the 6 to 8 weeks after that. Again, like 1 to 2 months. We'll kind of play it by ear, and then eventually my goal would be to get back to 2 videos. So that's what I'm thinking currently. Of course, it is subject to change. Like with the entire way I've tried to approach this pregnancy so far, I just want to listen to my body, listen to my spirit, see how I'm doing, and make my decisions and maybe move things around based on that. That's what I'm thinking right now, and I will try to communicate with you guys too as I go, kind of how that plan shifts, changes, evolves, adapts over time. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this little, who am I kidding? We've covered a lot. Look at my second trimester, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for being here with me, for supporting me during this journey. It really has just meant so much. I know that my content has looked a little bit different and probably will continue to look different for a few months as I look ahead to giving birth and those first few months postpartum. I do hope to return to kind of a bit more normalcy eventually, but right now pregnancy things are just top of mind for me, so there might be a few more videos along those lines than, typically would be otherwise. But I really hope that you enjoyed spending some time catching up with me today, and I would love to know if you're currently pregnant, maybe where you're at in your pregnancy journey right now. How many weeks are you? How are you feeling? Or if not, is it something that you're excited about down the road, something that you've maybe done a few times already? Maybe you're an experienced mom, or perhaps you're not planning on having kids and for whatever reason are just still interested in wanting to hear more about it. So yeah, wherever you're at, just thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear from you. And as always, friends, don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, friends.